A little flashback to Chai Nayan's life. In a place like dojo, there are children who look very enthusiastic when they see a disciple of a hero. The person they mean is the little genius, Chai Nayan. She is now talking face to face with Yu Shiyuk, but their conversation doesn't seem to be going well. Shiyuk then asked her, was she sure, wanted to change her weapon to a bow? He also asked, was she forced by her mother to do that? Hearing that, Nayan immediately replied, there was no particular reason, she just wanted to change it. She felt that a genius like her might be able to become the best archer if she tried hard. Shiyuk was really helpless to hear that. He had even rewarded her with a magic sword. Nayan then immediately apologized to her master, but Shiyuk was very angry with her. He didn't want her to call him master. He didn't have a disciple who changed their life path at will. Shiyuk sighed for a moment. He said that he would not stop her. But, he once again asked her, was this really her own will? He told her to think it through, don't make decisions that she would regret. That was the reason why Nayan used a weapon that was not her talent. Back to the present, they continue to compete. So far they are still evenly matched. Their target distance has also increased to 450 meters, but that distance is certainly not their limit. The audience themselves watched the match in awe. The archers from the Veritas class really did not expect Hajin to be able to keep up with Nayan. A female archer was also as surprised as him. The distance was already above 400 meters. 450 meters was her personal record. Hearing the conversation between the two of them, a man behind them then said, not only could he keep up with her, but he also shot as soon as Chai Nayan managed to hit the target. He wouldn't be surprised if it was just 1 or 2 shots, but shouldn't he feel the psychological pressure in this tension-filled match? But, Kim Hajin's expression was quite calm even though he was mentally fighting. He even guessed, perhaps, Kim Hajin would win this bet. Jonghak was then very upset to hear that. They then immediately became silent when they realized it. Jonghak was also as surprised as them. He was very worried about Nayan at this time. As the shooting range continued to increase, Nayan was now having trouble hitting the exact point of the target bullet. Nayan could only curse seeing that she had lost her composure at this time. Seeing that, Hajin then said, as he said, she was not suitable to use a bow. Nayan was then surprised to hear him suddenly say that. She then asked him, was he scared? Why did he provoke her like that? He told her to shut up and shoot his arrow. Chai Nayan had an impatient nature. She would be affected by any provocation. She was not suitable to be an archer. But the reason why she insisted on becoming an archer was, Hajin then asked her, you were scared, right? Afraid to use the sword. His question really surprised Chai Nayan. With a sharp look in her eyes, she then told him to shut up, but Hajin continued to provoke her. He asked, is that not the reason? But according to him it is precisely so. That's why she is always looking for excuses, right? Besides swords, I am also talented in using bows. I am talented in using bows. I can also become the greatest hero with crossbows. She always convinced herself by saying that, Hajin said, considering she switched to bows halfway through, she is already pretty good as an archer. His provocation seemed to trigger Nayan. She once again told him to shut his mouth. But, Hajin still continued his provocations, she said, but at that level, let alone killing a jinn, avenging her family alone she would not be able to. His words really took away the last calm that was in Nayan, and as she shot her arrow, towards the target above, something very surprising then happened. The shot turned out to miss and was unable to hit the target. The audience was then equally shocked and they saw it. An expression of disbelief could be seen clearly on Nayan's face when she saw it. She really couldn't believe what she saw. Seeing that, Hajin then closed the match with his last shot. Nayan sat listlessly on the floor facing her defeat. A few moments later, somewhere in the cube, Yona was seen who was walking leisurely there, but she was then surprised when she saw Nayan sitting in the garden nearby. She looked sad. Seeing that, Yona then approached her. She asked, why was she here? Everyone was looking for her. With her head bowed, Nayan asked, did she also hear about it? That bastard brought up her family. Yona was then surprised to hear that. She then asked, why was he acting like that? Nayan said that he once helped her, and even though they were not that close, she always thought that he was not a sneaky bastard like the rumor said. But what confused her was, why he always behaved like that. Yona was also confused at this time. She did not understand what Hajin wanted to achieve by saying that to her. But she then suddenly realized something. A series of questions then appeared in her head. Are Nayun and Hajin the people she needs? The answer is yes. If the relationship between the two of them deteriorates, won't it interfere with her plan to recruit them? The answer is yes. If this continues, then the problem will widen. Yona was actually lazy to do this. She then said to her, Hajin didn't have a family, maybe for the same reason as her. Nayun was then surprised to hear that. Yona said that this was just her guess, but she felt that maybe Hajin felt a connection with her. He wanted her to understand his feelings even though he said things like that. And he wanted her to live a good life. It really surprised Nayun. After saying that to her, Yona was sure that she still had a lot to think about, so she would leave first. She also asked her not to go out for too long. With Yona's departure, Nayun was now back alone there, sitting pensively in the garden. She then recalled her interaction with her brother at that time. Her brother asked, why did she suddenly want to become an archer? Nayun said, there was no reason, she just felt bored when wearing a sword. Her brother was silent for a moment hearing that. He then stroked his little sister's hair, and said, whatever path she chooses, he will support her, because he knows she will do well. Nayun smiled happily after getting her brother's support, but, her brother asked, can she promise him? Nayun was then confused to hear that. Her brother said, in the future, when she is ready, he wants her to really think about what she wants. Hearing that, Nayun then promised her brother. Nayun seemed to be enlightened when she recalled the incident at that time. A system notification suddenly appeared in front of Hajin at this time. Extreme luck had been activated in the human relations section. His SP had increased by 253. Hajin was then confused to see that, and something he did not expect seemed to be happening between him and Nayun. After finding out a little about Hajin's past, Jin-hyuk then contacted Yona to tell her the information he had found. He said that he felt Kim Hajin had a secret. He had to find out more details, but he suspected that maybe he was related to a crime syndicate. Jin-hyuk felt like now was not the right time to discuss the chameleon troupe, so he didn't tell Yona which crime syndicate it was. He then asked her, should he keep investigating? Yona replied yes. She would definitely make him join the essence of the straight. Jin-hyuk seemed to think of something strange after hearing that. He then praised her and said, it seems like he should use his secret weapon. Yona seemed to realize that and asked, what nonsense is he thinking right now? Hajin probably didn't know there was someone investigating his past. He himself is now training at the training ground. There were a lot of spectators at the archery competition, so it was no wonder that the rumors were spreading. But he was surprised that someone came to interview him. He was even a little afraid to go to class now, but he was then surprised when he heard the voice of someone who was practicing there. He was confused who had not entered the class at this hour, but when he saw that person, he was then surprised. The person had short hair and was practicing using the sword at this time. The person turned out to be Nayun. She also seemed to be aware of his existence. She then immediately hid the sword behind her body. She seemed to feel embarrassed. Hajin then said, it looks like you are practicing. Nayun seemed to be still surprised to see Hajin catch her practicing using a sword. She then stammeringly replied yes, she was practicing. So what? Hajin said that he didn't mean it, by the way. Hajin then asked about her new hair. Hearing that, Nayun asked him back, what was wrong with her hair? Hajin asked, she didn't cut her hair because of the bet, right? Hearing that, Nayun then irritably said that she cut it just because it was hot. Did he think she cared about that? Hajin smiled slightly at that. He didn't mock her further and said that the style suited her. He also asked, did it feel fresher? Nayun didn't seem to expect Hajin to say that. With a slight blush, she then confirmed it. After that, Hajin then said she would go first. Nayun said okay. Seeing his figure who was now walking away, Nayun then thought she heard Hajin was originally a swordsman. When he abandoned everything he had formed for a lifetime, and chose another weapon, she wondered, how did he feel at that time? Nayun then put magic power into the sword. A powerful greenish aura then appeared enveloping the sword. She concentrated fully while doing so. She then felt happy because the aura could now reach the ceiling. She then recalled what her brother said at that time. Her brother asked, do you want to continue using the bow? You must have felt it today. Remembering these words made Nayun wonder, did he know from the beginning? After finishing his training and classes, Hajin then returned to the dormitory. He ordered camping equipment with a total price of nearly 2 million won. He felt that all this should be enough. He bought the camping equipment in preparation for the upcoming end-of-term exam which was held on a remote island. The academy would check the cadets' belongings before the test began, but that was to get rid of privately owned defense weapons and such, so this was no problem. As long as he said this was for emergencies. Seeing the evangel's seed that kept twitching to eat, Hajin then helplessly said that he understood. He would prepare the food. As he fed the seed, Hajin then realized that it had grown much bigger. He wondered if it would be born soon. The newborn evangel would look like a 3 or 4-year-old toddler. There would be no problem if he raised her in the dormitory as long as he turned her into witch's power, which makes her look like a cat or a puppy. When Hajin touched the seed responded to his touch. He chuckled at that. Smiling, he told it to be born soon. In Seoul City, St. Hotel, some chameleon troop members were gathering there. Jane then hesitantly asked the boss. Is she sure she was not joking? Was she really going to dress up as a cadet and sneak into the end-of-term exam? The boss said yes, that's why she needed her help. It made Jane really confused. Did she have to go that far? But she then realized, was this one of her weird obsessions? The boss said that there were people with skills that she wanted to see with her own eyes. Besides that, there was something she had to get from the exam center. Jane could only sigh helplessly hearing that. She then complied with her boss's request. Who could stop her? Jane then released some kind of liquid. The liquid then enveloped the whole body of the boss. While waiting for the transformation of the boss to be completed, Jane then explained the information about the cadets who would later become her disguise. Their mannerisms, personalities, and habits were all written down, so she asked her to remember. Hearing that, the boss casually replied, "All right." Hearing her casual tone made Jane get a bad feeling. Seeing that, the boss then told her that she was worrying too much. This is basically nothing. In a class in the cube, 2 female cadets were seen intimately hugging their friend. They asked their friend, did she have a boyfriend? She did not reply to their messages yesterday, which made them lonely. They also brought her a snack. The name of their friend is Lee Jina. She is also the person who is the boss's disguise. Seeing the interaction of the 2 of them with her, the boss then wondered, are these them? The friends who are written in the information section. She feels this is not difficult at all. She just needs to play a cadet. With a cheerful smile, she then said, "Oh my God, what boyfriend are you talking about?" Her demeanor now completely changed 180 degrees. It was witnessed clearly by Hajin. He was stunned to see it. Seeing his reaction, the boss wondered, did he see it? She then realized that Hajin had seen her disguise. Hajin still couldn't wake up from his shock. Realizing the strangeness of his attitude, Hajin then immediately moved away from there and headed to his seat. He really didn't understand at this time. He didn't understand why the boss was here. Time continued to roll, until finally the written exam ended, and now, the end-of-term practicum exam was finally about to begin. They boarded a ship to go to the remote island where the exam was held. There was also the boss. She was still hanging out with her 2 friends. Seeing that, Hajin thought, the boss was still in the cube, disguised as Coe Jean. Hajin originally thought that she would not appear in the cube after the midterm exam, but apparently she appeared again. This is one of the changes from the original plot of the novel. He does not know the reason, but for the time being he will follow her, to get additional SP, but Hajin is a little worried. Will he be okay? He had tried to talk with her as if they were close friends, but all he could get was a can of soda. He put it back in the vending machine without drinking it. He wondered, was she here to watch Suho and Jonghak? After a while, when they were about to reach their destination, Kim Soo-hyuk then appeared. He told them all to gather. He announced, the end-of-term exam rules are quite simple. They just need to survive on that island for 5 days, and get points. Points can be obtained by defeating monsters on the island, or they can steal them from other cadets. As a note, they can barter points with fellow cadets. For cadets who want to get higher points, they can get 200 points if they can snatch a name tag from one of the instructors, so they are free to challenge the instructors. Hajin really couldn't understand hearing that. How would anyone want to challenge the heroes who are still active? Kim Soo-hyuk continued, they would be dropped off at a predetermined place, so he told them to follow him. They understood. When they arrived there, the cadets then both got off the ship and headed to the island, but when Hajin walked forward, he was then surprised when he saw someone in front of him. That person is Rachel. He then immediately called her. He asked, does she want to pair up with him for this end-of-term exam? Hajin thought, it seems like it's not a coincidence that he went down together with Rachel for this exam. He noticed all the changes due to the co-author's interference. With the appearance of a villain who held a grudge against Rachel, she was the most vulnerable person to be targeted in this exam. Rachel was then surprised when she heard him suddenly ask that, with an apologetic tone. She then refused his offer. She was more comfortable alone, although Hajin had expected it. It still felt bad to be rejected. People with high rank tend to prefer to be alone. Even so, he had thought of another plan. Hajin then told her that he would share his location with her, just in case. He would not let the co-author play with him further. Hearing that, Rachel then thanked him, and they then separated from there. A few moments later, night fell. Someone's footprints were seen walking through the forest. The person walked while being careful of the surroundings. That person turned out to be Nayun. Right after that, she then saw the beasts that ambushed her. The beasts had the appearance of a large ape with sharp teeth. Nayun was not at all afraid of their ambush. With a swing of her sword, she then finished off the beasts with ease. She even looked quite relaxed. This does not seem to be the first time she has faced this, but that is not her problem right now. While laughing silly, she then confusedly shouted, "Where exactly is she now?" It seems like she got lost again. Nayun was really depressed at the moment. She had been killing monsters non-stop since she arrived on this island, but she didn't find the rations and resting place at all. If this continued, she might be disqualified first. But she was then surprised when she saw a bright shining light in front of her. She was very happy to see that and immediately moved towards the direction of the light. She could also smell delicious cooking from that direction. She was sure someone must have managed to get the rations. She was very grateful for finally being saved. But, what she did not expect was, the light turned out to be from Hajin, who was camping there. Hajin was quite surprised when she saw it. Nayun then surprisedly called him. Hajin said that there were still 12 hours before fellow cadets could fight each other. But Nayun had absolutely no intention of fighting him at this time. While looking at the meat he grilled, Nayun then confused and surprised asked, "Where did he get all this?" Hajin said that he bought them for emergencies. Considering the duration of the exam this time, such a smart decision would certainly never have occurred to Nayun. She also regretted it a little. With a slight blush, Nayun then praised his intelligence. But Hajin just looked at her silently when he heard her praise. That made Nayun even more embarrassed. Hajin then suddenly asked her how many points she had. Nayun was quite surprised at his sudden question. She then answered, 25. Hearing that, Hajin then made an offer to her. He would give her food in exchange for half of her points. Although Nayun was surprised that Hajin wanted half of her points, but she couldn't help but agree with his offer. She was already hungry at the moment. Hearing that, Hajin then asked, "She doesn't have a problem with the pork belly menu, right?" Nayun said she would eat it. Beggars have no right to be picky. In the end, he met Nayun instead of Rachel. Hajin thought, does that mean there has been no significant change in the story? To prove his guess, Hajin then hacked the drone servers placed throughout the island. It allowed him to see all the movements and whereabouts of the current cadets. And somewhere, a drone recorded the scene of Rachel walking towards a group of cadets. She approached the cadets to buy rations. They smiled slightly at her offer, with a sly smile. The leader of the cadets said that she didn't need to do that, she could just eat. Buying and selling between cadets seemed unethical. He asked, she would agree, right? After eating and chatting for a while, the two of them then both slept in a tent that Hajin set up. When morning came, Hajin then woke up. But he was then surprised, when he saw the sky that was still so dark. He wondered, was it polar night today? It was a situation when the sun did not appear or did not rise that lasted for several days. He also saw Nayun, who was still sleeping beside him. He then saw the evangel seed that was moving around restlessly because it wanted to eat. He then immediately calmed the seed. He couldn't stand the cuteness of the seed. After feeding the seed, he silently told it to stay in his pocket as long as he moved. Hajin then tried to wake Nayun up. He asked if she was still sleeping. He wanted to pack the tent, but Nayun did not respond at all. Seeing that, Hajin decided not to care about her anymore, and started packing the tent. Finally, the battle between cadets was allowed. If possible, he wanted to immediately get rid of the most dangerous first. But he can't kill anyone, because the cadets that he suspects as Jinn, technically still can't be called Jinn. There is a difference between Jinn who make contracts with other Jinn and Jinn who make contracts with demons. They are treated as pawns, disposable items, or experimental materials, but because they get power from fellow Jinn, they can prevent themselves from going berserk. On the other hand, they are also treated as main members, but there are not many of them because of the side effects. On this island, the only cadet who survived the side effects was Ju Yohun. Hajin thought he should look for a high place. His first destination was the world tree located in the center of this island. After determining his destination, Hajin then immediately moved quickly, while Nayan herself now seemed to be still asleep in her blanket. After a while, Hajin then reached the top of a hill. In the bushes on the hill, an arrow was seen aiming at a direction secretly. The direction the arrow was aiming at turned out to be where Hajin was. The archer then reported to Yona that she found someone. Seeing this, Yona then immediately stopped the archer before she could shoot. She said that she could not mess with him. The archer was then confused to hear that he was only ranked 937. Yona then explained to the archer named Rose, even so, she would not win against him. A feeling of confusion enveloped Rose's heart when she heard that. She really didn't understand what Yona meant, so she decided to watch Hajin. Seeing Hajin who took a step, she wondered, is he going to jump? Could it be that he plans to climb that tall world tree? The answer to her question was then answered shortly after that. After taking a step, Hajin then immediately jumped and climbed to the top of that towering tree. Seeing that, Yona then said to her, she saw it right. Rose was really dumbfounded to see that. She couldn't believe what she saw. He reached the very top of the world tree in just a few breaths. Yona said that the rank was just a number to him. She thought she already knew what would happen if she shot him with an arrow. Rose then realized how serious the situation was. Yona continued, one more advice from her, keep it a secret that he is actually strong. Rose was then confused to hear that. Yona explained, one day he might become part of her group. Hearing that, Rose understood. She promised to bury this secret deeply. Right after that, her smartwatch then rang. Yona then said to her, Ejin had contacted. She then invited her to come back. Hajin himself was now perched at the very top of the world tree. He then used 1,000-mile eyes. It made him able to see all the activities on the island. After observing for a while, Hajin then found the person he was looking for. He smiled slightly. It was time to make the reward fall into his lap. He needed to prepare a stick with a particular phrase and coordinates. This was all he needed. After that, Hajin then threw the stick strongly towards his target. It was not an ordinary stick, because he had poured the stigma's mana into it. The stick shot quickly towards the man. As the stick approached, the man seemed to notice it, but Hajin's goal was not to attack the man using the stick. He only targeted the ground nearby. The man was silent for a moment. Seeing that, he then picked up the stick that was stuck on the ground nearby. After picking it up, he then turned his head in a direction, towards where Hajin was. Hajin was just watching it silently. Now, all he had to do was wait. At the place where Hajin set up his tent before, Nayan, who seemed to be still asleep there, then showed signs of waking up. She woke up with a feeling of shame in her heart. Her heart was pounding at this time. She then recalled Hajin's words earlier. Hajin at that time asked, why are you so cute? Nayan seemed to have woken up earlier and misunderstood because she thought Hajin was calling her cute. Even though Hajin asked that to Evangel Seed, Nayan's mind was really confused at this time. She had heard many compliments on her appearance since childhood, but what was wrong with him, saying things like that to people who were sleeping? But she then tried to think positively. Maybe there was a cat or dog earlier, or maybe he was talking to himself. But if not all of that, then, did he really say that to her? That thought made Nayan flustered. When Nayan was thinking about him, Hajin seemed to feel it. He wondered, is someone talking about him? Somewhere on the island, there was a group of cadets who were walking together. There was also Rachel. Starting last night, she started to join Ju Yohun and his group from the repeat class. They refused the points she offered, shared their food with her, and looked after her, then asked if there was anything she felt uncomfortable about. They seemed very kind and attentive to her, but Rachel felt something was wrong. While the other cadets were suffering to get a good ranking in their end-of-term exam, while these people did not make any movement to get points. They didn't seem to care how many points the other cadets got, as if they were more focused on her than the points. Rachel felt like there were always many eyes looking at her when she was in the group. This was really suspicious. Rachel thought that she didn't need to pretend to be here any longer. She felt that she should just be with Hajin. But, before she could talk to them, Yohun then called her from the top of the tree. He said that he found a grizzly bear worth 10 points. He asked her if she wanted to catch it with him. He felt he couldn't do it alone. Hearing that, Rachel was silent for a moment. She then accepted his invitation. Rachel thought that she would leave once she finished helping him. Hearing her agreement, Yohun then asked her to follow him. While filled with anxiety and doubt, Rachel thought. Hopefully she could escape naturally like this. When they arrived at the place Yohun was referring to, Yohun then pointed in a direction and said, "That's where the big bear he meant was." But instead of the grizzly bear she saw, a man with a mysterious appearance was standing there. Behind the man was a portal that had a shape similar to the one used by the jinn at the dinner party in Paris. Rachel was confused to see the man. He didn't look like an invigilator, but Rachel was then surprised when she saw a movement from the man. She then immediately pushed Yohun to move away from where they were standing. With a claw-like weapon in his hand, the man then launched an attack towards them. But fortunately Rachel was able to react quickly. It made them avoid injury, at least for now, seeing the man walking towards her slowly. Rachel did not expect a jinn to chase her all the way here. Rachel thought of retreating first. She then asked Yohun if he was hurt. While grimacing in pain, Yohun said that he was bleeding. This really hurt. He seemed to be slightly scratched by the jinn's claws. Rachel was confused to see that Yohun was only slightly scratched, so she was confused why he was acting so painful. But she was then surprised and confused when she saw Yohun just run away from her, leaving her alone to fight the jinn. Rachel could only sigh helplessly at that. She then realized that Yohun was the jinn's accomplice. She had felt something was wrong from the beginning, but she never thought that a cube cadet would become a bait for the jinn. Rachel could only blame her carelessness, and she then got ready to face the jinn. The jinn smiled very wide at that. He then attacked her again with his claw attack. The attack was so powerful that it caused a great effect. Rachel was quite surprised to see that. She seemed to have difficulty in blocking the jinn's attack. Rachel felt that the jinn's attack was very strong from the clash. But this was not her limit. While holding her rapier tightly, she then counterattacked the jinn. She could handle it if only this much. As their attacks continued to clash, Rachel then saw an opening. Not wasting the opportunity, Rachel then immediately attacked at that point. But, instead of feeling the sensation like stabbing a body, Rachel felt like stabbing empty air. Not only that, her legs now also seemed to be held by something that made her unable to move more freely, and the jinn who had been in front of her, now suddenly appeared behind her with a big smile. Rachel realized the seriousness of the situation she was currently facing. Panic could be seen clearly in her eyes. She was now facing attacks from two directions from the jinn. Seeing that, Rachel realized that she could not avoid this. But, in the midst of this desperate situation, a flickering light then appeared from a direction. The light then rained down on the jinn's doppelganger until it fell. Rachel was then surprised to see that the jinn looked angry and panicked at the same time. With a clawing motion, he then attacked Rachel again. Rachel was so surprised by the sudden attack that she couldn't react, but fortunately, with a slashing motion, Soho then blocked the attack for her. Not stopping there, Soho then called Nayeon and told her to move now. Hearing that, Nayeon then immediately prepared the arrow shot and aimed it at the jinn. After that, an ultimate attack then shot towards the jinn, but unfortunately the jinn managed to avoid the attack by jumping off the cliff. After successfully repelling the jinn, they then immediately approached Rachel. Although not participating in facing the jinn, Yonghan was also seen with them. Nayeon then asked her, "They are not exam invigilators, right?" She asked if she was okay. Rachel said that she was okay. She thanked them for helping her. While looking down the cliff, Soho said, "It seems they went down the cliff before being hit by the arrow. They don't know when they will ambush her again." So Soho asked her to group with them at least until they get out of here. Rachel understood, while Nayeon herself was confused to hear Soho call Rachel so formally. After that, the four of them then walked together. But, Rachel was then surprised and confused when she saw something in the bushes nearby. And when she examined the shrubbery, she then saw a bullet lying there. Rachel was then confused to see that. Seeing her who stopped walking, Nayeon then told her to hurry up. Seeing the bullet raised a conjecture from Rachel's mind. What might have been fired earlier, not from Nayeon's attack. The bullet certainly came from Hajin, who was now lodged at the top of the world tree, a sniper who could determine the fate of his target with one click. He was now aiming at Yohun, who was fleeing. Seeing Nayeon, who is now also carrying a sword, Soho then asked, did she decide to use a sword? Nayeon seemed to feel embarrassed to face his question. She then argued that this was just a spare weapon. She thought it would be bad if she was stubborn and only used a bow for the exam. While Rachel herself was now still busy thinking about her discovery earlier, only one gun user that she knew of took the exam this time, but she had never seen him use a sniper. She was also confused. How did he know that she was in trouble? Why did he help her? And also, why he did not appear even though he helped her, but, while Rachel was pondering that, Na-yeon suddenly called her. Rachel then immediately realized from her reverie and confusedly turned to her. Na-yeon said that they had to be together, they had to work together but remain individual. Na-yeon then asked her opinion, whether she was with her, or she was with Suho. Hearing that, Rachel looked hesitant. She then apologized and said that she had to leave. Suho was then surprised to see that. He then immediately told her that the situation was still dangerous, she could stay here, but Rachel refused his offer. There was someone she had to meet. Looking at the 22 points he had earned, Ha-jin thought, he got 12 points from Na-yeon, and 10 points from killing monsters. He felt he had to collect about 50 points to be safe. Thinking about that number alone made him tired. He wondered how many more monsters he had to defeat, but when Ha-jin was about to stand up from his position, he was then surprised when he saw someone coming. That person was the boss. He was confused why she was here. He wondered, did she want to fight him? If so, Ha-jin realized there was no way he could beat her. He doubted if he should run, but he immediately rejected the thought. He told himself to calm down. He was sure the boss was just here to observe, so he decided to ask her, what's wrong? Ha-jin initially doubted the boss wanted to fight with him, but when he saw the boss pull out her sword, he then realized that the boss really wanted to fight with him. That fact really made him want to cry. The boss then told him to raise his weapon. Hearing that, Ha-jin confusedly asked what she meant. Ha-jin knew the chances of him being able to beat the boss in the fight were almost zero, but, while pulling out the ether, Ha-jin asked, you want me to raise my weapon? How can you say that? Ha-jin thought, the most important condition to win in a battle between cadets is. Hearing that question, the boss knew that he knew why she told him to do that, but Ha-jin still pretended not to understand, and confusedly said that she just suddenly appeared and, not giving Ha-jin a chance to continue his words. The boss said, if he doesn't want to raise his weapon, then she has no choice. Hearing that, Ha-jin asked the boss to calm down a bit and explain the situation. Hearing that, the boss asked, was he trying to find a loophole in her words? If so, would she assume he wasn't complaining if she went first? Ha-jin smiled slightly hearing that. He had achieved his goal. Ha-jin's goal from the beginning was to steal her smartwatch secretly using ether. He had a conversation with her just to distract her. But the boss hadn't realized that. Seeing Ha-jin holding a smartwatch, the boss asked, did he give up? Ha-jin smiled slightly at that. He asked her back, according to her, who does this belong to? The boss was a little confused at first, but when she checked her wrist, she then realized. She was really surprised to see her smartwatch missing. Ha-jin then said, she knows that in the battle between cadets, whoever takes the opponent's smartwatch first, he is the winner. She will be eliminated if he presses this. The boss was shocked to hear that. She then frantically asked who he was. Ha-jin really couldn't think of hearing that. She came to fight him but didn't know who he was. The boss was really panicking at this time. Seeing that, Ha-jin told her not to be too afraid. He would let her this time. He then returned the watch to her. This was really a rare experience for the boss to be pitted like this. She didn't even know what to say. Not giving the boss time to react, Ha-jin then immediately left from there. She was then surprised to see that. She then asked where he was going. The boss was silent for a moment. She then asked Jane, did she see that? But Jane was confused to hear that. She said that she didn't see. Hearing that, the boss realized that Jane wasn't paying attention at all. She then said, it's nothing. Although she was half a times more sensitive than usual because of Jane's ability, she didn't believe a 17-year-old cadet could be that fast and thorough. It even made the boss wonder if she should turn on a spell release technique. After escaping from the boss, Ha-jin then went back to set up a tent. He felt that it was very scary. He would really die there if he fought her. His shoulders also hurt from being too tense, but fortunately the boss was in disguise which allowed him to escape from her. He was also able to find a good place to set up his tent, because for now he was safe. He had to eat and use some of his points, and while Ha-jin was thinking about which stat he would upgrade with his points, he then felt someone approaching him. That person was Rachel. Rachel looked relieved to have found him. Ha-jin then asked, was she looking for him? Hearing that, Rachel didn't know what to answer, but her stomach suddenly rumbled. Ha-jin could only be silent seeing that. He then asked her, did she want to eat? Rachel then hesitantly asked, if it was okay, she would give her some points. And the two of them then sat together while waiting for the dish to cook. In the midst of the awkwardness, Rachel then asked him, what have you been doing alone so far? Ha-jin replied, not much. he just did a few things to get points. Seeing Rachel suddenly silent while feeling embarrassed, Hajin felt she seemed very eager to ask something, but he felt it would be very embarrassing if he said he was the one who saved her. Looking at the wound on her neck, he wondered, was she injured, but he felt it was natural that she was injured because she had fought a jinn. After waiting for a while, the dish was finally cooked. Rachel was very happy to know that, but Hajin was then surprised when Evangel's seed suddenly moved. He tried to calm it down, but it was useless. Evangel's seed then jumped from his pocket towards the wound on Rachel's neck. Rachel actually wanted to ask him how he could prepare all this, but her intention was immediately shattered when she felt something enter her wound. Knowing that, Rachel then screamed. After several attempts, Rachel finally managed to pick up something stuck to the wound earlier. With a feeling of shame, Hajin then apologized to her. He said that it was his pet. He means the almonds he raised. Rachel could only feel confused hearing that. Hajin didn't know how to explain it to her. Rachel asked, shouldn't he raise things like that on the ground, instead of letting them fly around like that? Hearing that, Hajin once again apologized to her. He said he would do what she said, so he asked her to return it to him. When the atmosphere turned awkward, Hajin then invited her to eat, but when Hajin was about to prepare the food, Rachel suddenly called him. She said this might be a little late, but, she asked, if he wanted to team up with her, it'd be something like a co-op mission. Rachel looked very embarrassed when offering it to him. Hearing that, Hajin said that she said the same thing as Chai Nayan. Rachel was then surprised to hear that. She asked if Nayan asked him to form a team with her first. Hajin replied no, but he then accepted her invitation. Rachel was then happy to hear that. But she then realized that she was still on someone else's team. Hajin was then confused to hear that. Rachel asked, did he know Ju Yohun? Hearing that, Hajin then knew what she meant. He then said that it didn't matter. Rachel was confused to hear that. Hajin assured her that it wasn't a problem. He asked her to just team up with him. Somewhere, a silhouette of a person with a spear in his hand was seen. The corpses of the cadets could be seen scattered around the person. He was Shin Jonghak. He seemed to be in a bad mood at the moment. The people who had been slaughtered by Jonghak turned out to be Yohun's party. He looked shocked when he just returned and saw his colleagues already lying helpless on the ground covered in blood. He was confused about what happened. Seeing Jonghak, he wondered, did he do it? Jonghak smiled at his arrival. He then greeted him. Without explaining a word, Jonghak then threw something at him, but fortunately Jonghak did not intend to hit him. It stuck right in the tree behind him. The shock could be clearly seen on Yohun's face as he faced it, and as he looked towards what Jonghak had thrown, he then saw a twig with the word challenge and coordinates written on it. Reading that, Yohun immediately said that it wasn't him who sent it. He was wrong. The message was sent by someone else, but Jonghak didn't care about that at all. It wasn't important. Yohun could only horrified hearing that. With a tight grip on the spear in his hand, Jonghak then walked towards him and said, he just doesn't like insects like him. With a quick movement that made Yohun unable to react, Jonghak then strangled his neck. It made it difficult for Yohun to breathe. Not caring about that, Jonghak continued, those who don't know the place but stick out their tongues, just like snakes. The northwest area of the island observation tower, Sung-ah was seen who seemed to be thinking about something. Shortly after that, a man then came and called her. The man asked, who was she thinking about? Sung-ah replied, Kim Hajin. The man was confused to hear that. He didn't know who Kim Hajin was. He asked, didn't she have high expectations of Kim Suho? Sung-ah replied yes, Suho was her favorite cadet, but she had just received very interesting information. 2 days ago, she got a very secret report, Yuyona's report. In that report, Yuyona rated Kim Hajin much more impressive than Kim Suho. Of course, there is still a possibility that the information is fake, but they have found a special situation about Kim Hajin, right? The fact that he can use the light attribute, Sung-ah thought, they can let cadets like him occasionally lie to them. Hearing that, the man asked, is it possible to confirm that information? Sung-ah said she will try when she has time. The man confusedly asked, how to do it? By fighting with him. Sung-ah did not directly answer his question, and pointed her finger towards her nameplate. This is a bait equivalent to 200 points. The next day, Rachel was seen sitting alone outside the tent while warming herself by the campfire. The sky was still so dark even though it was morning because the polar night phenomenon was still happening. While looking at the bullet she found, Rachel was sure that the person protecting her must be Hajin, but what confused her was, why didn't he tell her? She was also curious how he knew that she was in danger. Lancaster's figure suddenly appeared in her head at this time. Rachel suspected that today's ambush might be the result of his actions too. It made Rachel's heart filled with doubts. At that time, should she just die with them, while Rachel was busy struggling with her thoughts? Hajin herself was now hunting monsters to get points. Seeing a monster that appeared, Hajin then immediately took a position to aim at it. The monster at this time also realized a danger from a direction, but it was too late. A very loud gunshot then ended the monster's life. After that, Hajin then walked over to the monster who was already lying helplessly on the ground. She felt that today's hunt went very smoothly, although Rachel's condition did not seem so good this morning. It seemed that she recovered quickly after he gave her meat to eat. But Hajin was then surprised when he heard the sound of stagnant water nearby. And when he followed the origin of the sound, he was then surprised when he saw a lake in a place like this. Hajin smiled happily at the sight. He was sure that there must be monsters with high points here. He wondered, could it be crocodile monsters? He then cast some kind of magic from his stigma. He thought it should be easy enough to lure the monster out with a sphere of light if he shone it over the lake. But Hajin was then startled when he felt someone from behind him. He asked, who was there, but there was absolutely no response to his question. The environment was so quiet as if there was no one, but Hajin knew that there were people there. He didn't know who it was, but they were pretty good at sneaking around, but it didn't matter to him. Hajin then activated 1,000-mile eyes. No one could hide in his eyes now. The person who was stalking him turned out to be Nayun. Seeing that, Hajin then shot at her. Nayun was then shocked when she saw a bullet that shot and hit right beside her. Hajin did that just to scare her. Hajin then asked, why was she following him? But Nayun was still evasive and said that she was not following him. Hearing that, Hajin asked her again, then what? Nayun was confused about what to answer. It was clear that she did follow him. She couldn't answer, which meant she did follow him, but Nayun still denied it. More importantly, she asked, what did he just do to her? Hajin snorted at that. He told her to answer his question first. Why did she follow him? But Nayun certainly didn't want to admit that. She said she told him that she didn't follow him. She followed Sung-ah. Hajin was then confused to hear that. He then asked, was that Yun Sung-ah? That he knew. Nayun confirmed it. She also asked him, why was he talking so casually to her? But Hajin didn't care about her grumbling at all. He then took and opened the notebook. Nayun was confused to see that. Why was he suddenly squatting while talking? Was he sick or something? It was natural that Nayun felt confused, because no one could see the notebook but himself. Hajin told her to just wait. He just needed a minute. He knew where Sung-ah was in the novel. During the first and second day, she was watching Kim Suho. During the third and fourth day, she should be watching the other promising cadets. The fact that she was after him meant. The reason Hajin opened the notebook at this time was to access all the drones on the island. It also allowed him to know Sung-ah's current whereabouts. She was seen silently watching him from the top of the tree. The fact that she was watching him meant that he was a promising cadet to her. Seeing him ignoring her, Nayun then called him and asked, rather than that, how did he do that just now? The thing he made earlier. It was a sphere of light, right? Hajin answered yes. He confirmed it. But he asked her not to try to investigate it further, with a charismatic look. Hajin asked her to be quiet if she understood. Nayun could only feel disgusted at that. She asked, what exactly did he say? Was he crazy? She wasn't even interested, so she wouldn't ask anymore. Hajin was really annoyed to hear that, even though she asked first. Hajin then said to her, because he came here first, he told her to go over there. Nayun could only accept that. She would do as he wanted. Even though he seemed arrogant to her, but he couldn't tell her the truth. If he told her about the stigma, then he should also tell her about the fact that this world exists in a novel. After that, Hajin continued to continue his hunt for points. After who knows how many monsters he had hunted, Hajin paused for a moment. It had been 2 hours since he separated from Nayun. Because he was busy hunting low to medium level monsters, he managed to accumulate 15 points very quickly. But the problem was, Hajin then turned his head in a direction, with a quick movement. Sung-ah then came down from the top of the tree and walked towards him. She greeted him and said, they met for the first time after she was rejected, right? Hearing that, Hajin replied, he thought so. Seeing his stony expression, Sung-ah asked, did she appear too suddenly? She asked him to take it easy, Actually, she was here to hold an event, in order to test the cadets' abilities. Hajin was then confused to hear that. Sung-ah explained, the rules were very simple, she would stay in one place and only use her left hand, she could attack him at will, and if a single attack can hit any part of her body except her left hand, or make her move even a step, while pointing to her name tag, Sung-ah said she would give him this name tag. Sung-ah then asked him, it's easy right? Hajin was tempted to hear that, the instructor's name tag is worth 200 points, you will be ranked first as soon as you get it. It was definitely a tempting offer for him, but, his opponent was a very great person, an active hero, Yun Sung-ah. Hajin doubted whether he could do it. Seeing his silence, Sung-ah asked, what is his decision, whether he wants to give up here, or, accept this challenge. Hajin chuckled at her provocation. While taking out his gun, he said that this was a very sudden event. Without saying another word, Hajin then immediately fired a bullet at Sung-ah, but Sung-ah's eyes were very calm when she saw a bullet that shot right in front of her eyes. She then thought, let's see, how strong are you? And Sung-ah then casually deflected the bullet using her left hand, no, more precisely with her finger, although it looked relaxed, but the energy she released was so strong that it made the bullet bend. But Sung-ah was actually not that relaxed, she felt a slight sensation of pain in her fingers. He could create a sphere of light, and had that much power. From a gun, it seemed that the report was not unconscious. Even so, Sung-ah was still acting strong. She said that it felt a little ticklish. Hajin was quite surprised to see that. He didn't expect Sung-ah to shrug off the reinforced magic bullet so easily without using mana. He realized that a direct attack would only be useless, so, Hajin then created 2 daggers using the stigma. They were not ordinary daggers, because he had tied transparent threads to the hilt of the daggers. And Hajin then vigorously threw the 2 daggers towards her, but the throw of the dagger could be avoided so easily by Sung-ah, she asked, before becoming a gunner. He used to be a swordsman, right? She said that it was a good choice to use both a sword and a gun at the same time. Without any pause, Hajin then returned to shooting at her with his gun, but his shots were parried so easily by Sung-ah, but she still praised him. His attack power was stronger than the trainee's firearms. It seems he is indeed talented in using firearms, but what she didn't realize was that the 2 daggers that Hajin had thrown earlier were now flying back towards her, and by the time Sung-ah realized it, it seemed a little late because the distance between the daggers and her was already so close. Hajin smiled happily at that. It would be too far for her left hand to reach the daggers, but just when Hajin thought he had won, a very powerful aura then appeared from Sung-ah's body. It managed to dispel the daggers and even destroyed them. The environment was suddenly silent for a moment. Hajin could only be stunned to see that. He couldn't do anything about it. Sung-ah was amazed by his trick. Earlier, she felt it was really amazing. She didn't expect he would change the path of the dagger with mana. She asked, what technique is that? She felt he was like an onion. A new side of him kept appearing no matter how much she knew. She also asked, does he have other talents? Hajin was completely helpless at this time. He then reholstered his gun, and said that he would leave now. Sung-ah was then surprised and confused to hear that. Seeing Hajin, who was now walking away, Sung-ah then called him and asked, where is he going? It was getting exciting. Sung-ah didn't seem to want Hajin to just leave. But what Sung-ah didn't realize was, Hajin then said that she was moving. Sung-ah was then confused to hear that. Hajin explained. She said she would only use her left hand, but now, she was using her legs too. Sung-ah really didn't expect that. With a feeling of displeasure she asked, did he think her offer was a joke? Hearing that, Hajin just said that he was just trying his luck. He felt it was a waste of time because the stat difference between them was so big, so he decided to give up and say goodbye to her. Seeing him walking away, Sung-ah then called him back. But Hajin ignored it. Actually, he was half serious about him really losing earlier, but she was so scary that he couldn't continue. He was really scared earlier, seeing him who continued to walk away without caring about her. Sung-ah said that he would really regret this. The interaction between the two of them was witnessed by the boss, who was now on a tree near them. Right after that, Drun then contacted her. He asked, was the infiltration successful? The boss replied yes. Hearing that, Drun said, he didn't think it was a good choice to move separately with her team. Jean's friends might think she was acting strange, but the boss felt it would be a bad choice to get around with them. But The boss suddenly felt something. Drun also felt it. He was confused. What happened? The boss said, "This is a heartbeat." Somewhere on the island, in a tree there was an object that looked like a fetus. The fetus seemed to be carrying a creature. The boss said, "The butterfly sapling will rise." The butterfly sapling, it's a spirit-type monster that clings to trees like a parasite. It appeared on the last day of the end-of-term exam and was killed by the main characters. In that process, Kim Soho got the dust of the sapling, and Rachel got the clue about enlightenment. That's how the original story goes, but Rachel is currently teaming up with him to help her enlightenment. He had to get her to join the fight against the butterfly sapling, but the problem was feeling confused. Rachel then asked him why he was circling around this area. It was because Hajin didn't know when and where the butterfly sapling would appear. He never wrote such details. Hajin didn't know what to answer her question. After collecting and stacking all the monsters they had hunted, Nayeon thought maybe she would get first place in this exam if it was like this. She wondered what was the remaining 20 hours until the exam was over. Younghan looked exhausted after doing all that activity. He told them that he wanted to drink first. When Soho was about to stand up, Nayeon suddenly called him. She asked, in his eyes, "What is Kim Hajin like?" Soho was then confused to hear her suddenly ask that question. Nayeon said, "Doesn't he seem to be hiding a lot of things? He continues to feel suspicious, both at the museum and in Paris. Moreover, he might be strong enough to be on par with high-ranked cadets despite having a weak-looking body." Hearing that, Soho felt she had a point. He suddenly remembered Hajin's words at that time. At that time Hajin said that he knew more about Nayeon than him. Soho suddenly smiled when he remembered that. Nayeon was then confused to see him suddenly react like that. Soho just chuckled. He said it seemed like Hajin was hiding a lot of things. Hearing that, Nayeon then asked him, did he know anything? She asked him to tell her now, but what they didn't realize was, there were currently many creeping roots approaching them. Soho just told her to find out for herself. Why did she even ask him? Suddenly, many giant creeping roots suddenly appeared enveloping the two of them. They were then shocked and confused to see it. They were shocked when they saw the roots of a tree that was there suddenly moved to attack them. This incident did not only happen to Soho and Nayeon. Hajin and the other cadets also experienced it. They seemed overwhelmed in repelling attacks from the tree roots. Rachel herself was now confused when the place where she was standing suddenly shook violently as if hit by an earthquake, and when her heart was filled with feelings of confusion, Hajin suddenly called her. He invited her to go to the source of this vibration and kill the monster. Hajin also asked her to protect him when they were near the monster, although Rachel still felt confused. But she accepted his invitation without asking. The cadets who felt this vibration must be heading straight to the butterfly sapling now. He would not let them get the opportunity, and the two of them then both moved towards it. Seeing the large tree with its roots swaying around it like it was protecting something, Sung-ah knew that it was a butterfly sapling. Her colleague then asked her over the intercom, monsters like that shouldn't appear, right? Should they stop the exam? Sung-ah was silent for a moment hearing that. She then said, it will probably be fine. The ability of the cadets undergoing the current exam should be able to defeat it without any problems. Hearing that, her colleague could only lament her barrenness. Hearing that, Sung-ah asked, did he really think so? She told her colleague named Vieri not to underestimate them. The cadets are the seeds of heroes, and heroes always thrive in times of crisis. With a sword in her hand, Nayeon then jumped and cut the roots of the tree with one slash. With a happy smile, she then asked their opinions about her action just now. Soho was amazed to see that. It was really amazing. But he told her that the cutting power would increase if she flowed sword energy around the sword. Nayeon was upset to hear that. She told him to be quiet, tell her about it later, looking at the roots that kept appearing. Younghan was confused. Why did they keep appearing no matter how many times they cut them? Hearing that, Soho said, if cutting the roots didn't work, then they had to destroy the main body first. As the cadets moved closer to the tree, they then found something strange in the tree. Something inside the cocoon was moving, and shortly after, a creature then came out of the cocoon. The creature had a shape like a giant purple butterfly. They were then puzzled when they saw a butterfly coming out of the cocoon on the tree. After fully exiting the cocoon, the butterfly sapling then flew to the top of the island. Not only that, it also released a kind of powder that spread throughout the island, and when the cadets inhaled the powder, they then felt strange. Nayun was confused about what this was. She lost her strength after inhaling the powder. She couldn't stand up straight. It wasn't just her who experienced these symptoms, other cadets were also the same. Some even fell down immediately when they inhaled the powder. As Nayun continued to inhale the powder, her condition worsened, until she couldn't stand up anymore. But fortunately Suho immediately came to help her. He put Nayun and Yonghan, who fell unconscious, in a tree nearby. Seeing their condition, Suho wondered if they were just asleep. He felt like the powder was not poisonous. He realized that he could not continue to move while holding his breath. He doubted, could he defeat that creature before he took another breath? But while Suho was confused about how to deal with that creature, he was then surprised when he saw two human figures moving towards the butterfly sapling. The two people were of course Hajin and Rachel. He really took this exam with full preparation. He had even prepared a mask to deal with the butterfly sapling powder. Suho could only be dumbfounded at that. He was really surprised at the appearance of the two of them. As the two of them moved towards the butterfly, Rachel then saw the cadets collapsed on the ground. She wondered if Hajin had predicted all this and prepared everything. But her attention was soon distracted when Hajin suddenly called out to her, while pointing towards the butterfly sapling flying above them. Hajin said that he was going to defeat it, so he asked her to protect him from the roots. Rachel understood. Hearing her confirmation, Hajin then aimed his gun and shot at the butterfly, but unfortunately, his shot failed to hit the butterfly because of how fast it moved. Realizing that there was someone endangering the life of the butterfly sapling, the roots then immediately moved to attack them, but fortunately Rachel was able to block the attack of the roots. But the problem they faced was certainly not that easy. Rachel was then surprised. When she felt movement coming from the ground below her, she knew that the roots would emerge from under there. Realizing that, Rachel then immediately pushed Hajin away from there, but even though she managed to save Hajin, her own situation was serious at the moment, because the roots managed to wrap around one of her ankles. After that, the roots then threw Rachel strongly. It made Rachel hit the tree there strongly. Seeing that, Hajin then worriedly called her, and what made him more worried was, when he saw the roots again moving to attack him, he was really in a desperate situation right now. Because he was a sharpshooter, he wouldn't be able to fend off the roots as easily as a sword user like Rachel. And when the roots finally landed on him, the impact was devastating. But fortunately, Suho immediately came to his rescue. Hajin was then surprised when he saw him. He asked, what was he doing here? But Suho couldn't answer his question at the moment. Doing a little movement earlier had made him inhale the powder a little. Realizing his situation, Hajin then asked him to hold on, looking at Rachel, who was lying on the ground unconscious. Hajin wondered if Rachel had fainted. He was really confused about what to do at the moment. There had to be someone to protect him from the root attack while he focused on defeating the butterfly sapling, and in the midst of his confusion, the evangel seed that had been hiding in his clothes suddenly came out. Hajin was shocked to see that. He then asked the seed, where are you going? But evangel seed completely ignored his call and continued towards Rachel. The goal was clear. It wanted to suck the blood that came out of Rachel's wound. Hajin could only feel annoyed at the behavior of the seed. Suho then asked him, he was here to defeat the butterfly, right? He said he would help him even though he seemed to be unable to move for a long time. Hearing that, Hajin thought, he could only make 3 fire element bullets with the stigma's mana, so he should be able to defeat it with that. Hajin then stood up and asked him to help him. He asked, earlier he saw his bullet missed, right? The monster moved very fast, unlike ordinary spirit-type monsters. If he wanted to kill it, he had to aim at it when he was close enough. He wanted him to distract it until he was close to it. Hearing that, Suho understood. He then put his mana into his sword. Seeing that, Hajin knew it was the sword Saint Mana. He wondered, had it become stronger since the incident at the museum? Suho then turned to him while smiling slightly. He said that it was really fascinating. Hajin was then confused to hear him suddenly say that. He did not understand why Suho suddenly said that. Suho said, whatever secret weapon he took out, he was always not surprised. He also asked, did he already know Nayun's talent? Sometimes when he saw him, it felt like he was seeing someone who knew everything about this world. Suho smiled very brightly. Hajin could only be stunned at this time. Suho then said he would leave the rest to him, and he then jumped up to face the roots. Hajin could not wake up from his shock at this time. Seeing Suho, who was now busy facing the roots, Hajin then thought, how would I know that? It's only because the person who created this world is me, the author. Because of that, a problem has occurred. Hajin's current goal was to go to the top of the towering tree on the island. He looked a little difficult in climbing the tree, but finally, he made it to the top. The sun was shining very brightly there. The world he made as this novel, now was right in front of his eyes. When he heard Suho's words earlier, he then realized that he became a character he had never made before. With an aiming position, Hajin then pressed the trigger, and fired at the butterfly sapling. The bullet burned the butterfly. Suho was surprised to see him could use the fire element. He wondered, this should be enough, right? The butterfly sapling was burning badly at the moment. Even so, it was still alive. Hajin was then surprised to see that. He felt anxious at this time. He wondered, was the attack power a bit lacking? But just as he was about to shoot the bullet once again, someone suddenly moved at this time, and attacked towards the butterfly. The attack from that person was so strong that it made the butterfly sapling unable to fly anymore. Hajin was then shocked by the sudden change, accompanied by the sound of footsteps. The boss then appeared. Her body seemed to be enveloped by a pitch-black aura at this time. Seeing her appearance, Hajin wondered if she was aiming for the butterfly powder. Seeing that the butterfly was about to fall to the ground, Suho didn't waste the opportunity. With a quick movement, Suho then slashed the butterfly to ensure its death. A very loud sound was then heard as the giant butterfly fell to the ground. Seeing that, Suho smiled happily, seeing the monster was defeated. And he then just fell unconscious. The slash seemed to drain the remaining strength in him. The boss herself then walked towards the corpse of the butterfly sapling. But when she was about to take something inside the butterfly corpse, Hajin suddenly told her to hand it over. He said that it was an item that she shouldn't take. She still didn't know what the butterfly powder was for. She might be here to target the powder because drop items from spirits could be sold for a lot of money. In order to fight the spirits that will appear in the future, Kim Suho must get the butterfly powder. The boss then turned her head and looked in his direction. Looking at Suho and the other main characters who were unconscious, the boss thought, even though the butterfly was dead and the sleeping effect was not that strong, she could not believe that there was a cadet who was still strong standing. She felt that Kim Hajin was really strange. She decided to observe him more. Hajin could do that was because he covered his breathing path with ether. Even so, he already felt discomfort at this time. He wondered, had he reached his limit holding the powder with ether? He was also having trouble breathing. He couldn't go on like this. He had to wear the mask. But, Hajin was then surprised when he saw the boss suddenly attack him. The boss enveloped him using the black aura. The black aura then formed a kind of black ball that surrounded the two of them. The boss now no longer needed to be afraid of someone seeing her true form because there were only two of them there. After removing her disguise, the boss then asked him, he knows who she is, right? Hearing that, Hajin then answered, she is Li Xiaopeng, right? That was the name on the business card that the boss gave him during the midterm exam. The boss was silent for a moment hearing that. She didn't know who Li Xiaopeng was, but she then remembered that it was a fake identity that she used when she approached Kim Hajin that time. The boss then confirmed it. She asked, according to him, why was she here? Hajin asked her back, wasn't she here to observe? The boss didn't answer and asked again. How long had he known that she was Li Xiaopeng? And when Hajin was about to make an excuse, with a threatening look, the boss said, if he dared to lie, she would kill him. She means, beat him up. Hajin was very scared to hear that. He then immediately said that he found out when he stole her smartwatch. When he looked at her more carefully, he noticed she was a little different. The boss was confused to hear that. Hajin said that he had sharp eyes. Hearing that, the boss then thought, Jane's talent could not see things with just sharp eyes. But Kim Hajin could not only see through Jane's talent, but also the consciousness barrier device. It raised a guess in the boss's mind, perhaps, his mana was anti-magic. A special case where all mana in the body is anti-magic. If true, then it makes sense that he can see through Jane's talent, because he only needs to focus his mana on the optic nerve to do so, and if this theory is true, it means that he is a very valuable resource that she cannot let go. Realizing that, the boss then removed the black aura that surrounded them. Hajin could only be surprised to see that, but his surprise did not stop there. The boss then gave him the butterfly powder. She said she would give this to him, in return, but the boss suddenly shut up. Hajin could only be confused to see that. Jane, who was watching, then asked her not to say anything strange, just do as she said. If she didn't know what to say, she asked her to calm down, don't rush, just slow down. Hearing that, the boss was silent for a moment. She then suddenly asked Hajin to give his phone number. Hajin could only be stunned to hear that. After successfully escaping from the clutches of the boss, Hajin could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He thought he was going to die earlier, although it was a bit dangerous. But he managed to get an important object, but he was confused. How did he give this to Suho naturally? Because the boss suddenly intervened, he had to think of a way, but Hajin then finally remembered something. He momentarily forgot about Rachel and Evangel's seed, but when he saw their current condition, he was then surprised. A bright light appeared from Rachel's body at this time. Hajin did not expect that to even happen. It was an indication that Evangel would hatch. The light continued to shine brighter and brighter until Hajin was unable to see it directly. Rachel herself now felt very sleepy. She was still thinking that she had to quickly defeat the spirit. She had to be ranked first and become the pride of the royal family. But she was confused. What was happening? It was so bright, and what made her more confused was, when she saw a little girl in front of her. The little girl then hugged her. Rachel was confused about who she was. She also felt that her wound had recovered. It felt very warm. When looking at the little girl, somehow Rachel felt that she was very familiar. It felt like she was like her as a child. Her face was really exactly like her. The little girl seemed to say something to her, but she didn't hear it clearly. Rachel was then confused to hear that. She was confused about what she had just said. She thought that she should ask her about it, but it seemed that she couldn't do that now. She was too sleepy. When Rachel fell back asleep, she muttered, "What did you just say?" Seeing Hajin coming, the little girl then called him Dad, and said that Mom was asleep again. The little girl is of course Evangel. After a while, the instructors then came to evacuate them. Hajin also brought Suho, who also fainted. The instructors brought the sleeping cadets back to the ship. The fourth day of the exam had ended. 9 o'clock the next day, Hajin was seen pensively looking at the sea. The grueling final exam had finally reached its end, although there was a slight interruption about the appearance of the butterfly sapling that even the instructors did not expect, but it was agreed that the 4 cadets who contributed to defeating the creature would be rewarded with points. Hajin then opened his smartwatch, but there was no new message that he got, no contact from the chameleon troop. He was confused why the boss was interested in him. He really couldn't think of a reason. But Nayan suddenly approached him and called him. She asked how he could do it at that time. Hajin was then confused to hear that. Nayan said she didn't remember anything because she fainted. But Kim Suho said he destroyed the butterfly's wings or something. Hearing that, Hajin pretended not to understand. He just answered, how could he destroy the butterfly's wings with just a gun? Nayan also felt that it didn't make sense. Hajin then remembered. He asked, why did she use a sword instead of her bow? His question really surprised Nayan. She was very upset with him, but she didn't know what to say. Hajin said, he meant, if you are a person, you have to be consistent. It is dangerous to use a weapon that you are not good at. Nayan could only feel upset hearing that. She was not that bad that he had to worry about. Hearing that, Hajin decided not to care anymore. He then asked her again, then, how did she feel after using the sword? Nayan seemed to feel hesitant to answer. Seeing that, Hajin asked, it was still scary, right? But Nayan didn't want to admit that. She stammered, who is scared? Idiot. Hearing that, Hajin knew she was lying. Chai Nayan was very bad at lying, but somehow he didn't think of changing her nature, but still. Hajin said that she would get better if she continued like that. She was a natural swordsman. Nayan was speechless when she heard that. When it was time to eat, Nayan then gathered with Yona and Suho. I don't know what they were talking about earlier, but Yona said that according to her, it seemed that Hajin was interested in her. Nayan said that was not what she meant, not caring about her reaction. Yona then asked Suho. He is close to Hajin, right? Did he hear something from him? Suho was even confused to hear that. Is he close to him? Suho then recalled his conversation with Hajin at that time. He said that Yona was not wrong either. Yona continued, Kim Hajin was very cold and blunt to anyone even if they tried to approach him, but that kind of person showed a lot of interest in Nayan. Hearing that, Nayan embarrassedly asked her, wasn't she very close to Hajin from the beginning? Yona confirmed that. He approached her because he wanted to say something to her. But didn't he show interest in her in a different way? Nayan was embarrassed to hear that. Her face turned red from blushing. She said that wasn't what she meant. Yona then asked her, so, what will she do? Nayun was then confused to hear that. But Yona then suddenly saw Hajin. She then immediately called him. Yona and Suho then both greeted him. Hajin also greeted them back, while Nayun herself turned her face in embarrassment. Hajin looked at her for a moment, then just left from there. Yona realized it. She asked her, she saw that right? He just looked at her when he left. Hearing her banter, Nayun immediately told her to stop. She was really blushing at this time. After a while, Hajin then arrived in his room. He asked, "Are you inside?" Right after that, Evangel then came over to her dad. Hajin was still not used to being called daddy. He asked her not to run around. Evangel asked, where did he come from? Hajin said that he already said, he bought food for her. Evangel was happy to hear him buy her food. By the way, Hajin asked her not to call him daddy from now on. Evangel was then confused to hear that. Hajin said that people could misunderstand later. Hearing that, Evangel once again asked, why? Hajin asked, can she call him uncle or Kim Hajin? But Evangel once again asked, why? Hajin was really helpless to hear that. He thought, looks like she needs a little education. As he looked at her, Evangel then smiled sweetly at him. Evangel hatched next to Rachel that day. He called her daddy and said that mommy was asleep again. Hearing her call him daddy, Hajin was confused. She had just hatched herself. But Evangel said that he was her daddy. It was true that he took care of her, but did not give Hajin the opportunity to speak further. Evangel suddenly hugged him. She seemed to really consider Hajin as her parent, but Hajin was then surprised when he saw a helicopter patrolling the island. Seeing that, Hajin then asked her, could she go into the seed again for a while? But Evangel didn't seem to understand the word seed. He said. Hajin explained, the shape was round and small, like herself before. Hearing that, Evangel then asked, what about mommy? Hajin was really helpless to hear her call Rachel mommy. He then just said that mommy was busy. Evangel seemed a little sad to hear that, but she then obeyed her daddy's words, and she then returned to being a seed. That's why Hajin managed to smuggle a small child into the ship. Hajin was really confused at this time. He was an adoptive parent or what? Seeing Evangel who was playing around, Hajin then told her to eat first. Evangel was very happy to hear that. Hajin then prepared the food he had bought for her, and when Evangel ate the food, she looked very happy. Seeing that, Hajin then told her to sit down and eat properly. Evangel understood. After taking care of Evangel, Hajin's gaze then turned to the butterfly powder he had obtained on the island. He wondered, what should he do with this? The powder was called the powder of butterfly sapling. It attached to the target with magical power, and helped awaken their hidden potential. The description is simple, but the subject of the hidden potential to be awakened depends on the target. In other words, the awakened potential can be a person or an item. Originally, it should be taken by Rachel and Kim Suho, but the story this time is different. Hajin thinks that he should be more careful about who he should give this to, while Rachel herself is now pensively looking at the ceiling of her room. She is still thinking about what she saw before she fell unconscious on the island. She is confused. Who is the little girl she saw? She was more like feeling her than seeing her. She can still feel her energy clearly. She wondered, was she the spirit of the tree or something? Her spirit beast powers were still unknown, or was she just hallucinating? But she didn't feel that she was just hallucinating. Rachel smiled as she recalled the little girl's face. She was confused. Why did she keep thinking about the energy she felt, as if she would meet her again someday?